Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. And I've got Abitibi Metals on today with their CEO, Jonathan Deleuze. I'm a big fan of this project for a couple reasons, well, three actually, key reasons. One of them, it's in Quebec, which is one of the greatest mining jurisdictions in the entire world. And the second thing is that I'm very bullish on copper, but have a hard time finding good copper exploration stories to bring to my audience. And ultimately, because this is high grade and I love high grade. And especially in a polymetallic deposit, and some of the great mines of Canada are polymetallic deposits. And when you're starting out with things like 2.4% copper over 17.45 meters in their last news release, that's a very exciting combination. So I wanted to talk to Jonathan because since the last time we spoke, they've had a couple news releases out that I want to talk about. So thanks for joining me, Jonathan.
I appreciate you having me once again.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna just nobody can see it here, but so the headline from your November 13th news release was Abitibi Metals announces 62% increase in resources at B26 to 11.3 million tons indicated at 2.13% copper equivalent and 7.2 million tons inferred at 2.2% copper equivalent. So you're getting up there.
Yeah, no, we're very happy with the update. I think as we talked about in earlier interviews, we really wanted to bring on the deposit apples to apples to our competitors, bring the commodity prices up, but also be able to highlight what was a very successful phase one drill program where we did complete 13,500 meters of very high impact drilling within that initial 300-meter zone. One of the things that we initially had planned the resource for September, but obviously it came out a bit late. And the reason behind that is we had run multiple models with an open pit to complement the high grade underground. We got very close on that, but really what limited us being able to bring that out, that combination, was the strip ratio on the open pit. But really, that's not, in our view, it's not because it isn't attainable. It's because this was drilled as an underground deposit, and the North Bedrock interface still needs to be covered quite a bit in order to convert that side of the deposit from what's currently categorized as waste into low grade material. So we have completed sampling 1,000 meters to start within the disseminated zone drilled by SOQUEM that was never historically sampled. We are going to plan some holes distributed amongst that zone. So that's still a viable thesis that we're gonna work towards. But at the end of the day, as of today, we have an 18.5 million ton resource at a combined average just under 2.2% copper equivalent. Really, the critical scale, in my opinion, and some of the notable individuals and companies that have reviewed the project is if we can get this above 20 million tons at a plus 2% copper equivalent, this becomes a very, very serious target. So in 1 year, we've become within striking distance of that mark. If you look at the sensitivity assessment on the resource, if we were to drop cut off to $80 per ton NSR, we're already at roughly 24 million tons at 2% copper equivalent. So we've done a lot in a year, but I think this is a step in helping us build credibility of this being a 30 to 50 million ton target. And as you mentioned, we brought out drill results a couple of days ago that once again show that we've expanded this system 200 meters
So
down dip.
before we get on to the drill
Yep.
results, the resource, does it come from that top layer or is it more from the underground layer of mineralization?
So the first 300 meters vertical captures the indicated category of the resource.
Yeah.
That the indicated category is about 11.3 million tons. Then the indicated dips into the roughly 300 to 400 meters vertical, and then the inferred captures the limited drilling from like the 350 mark down to the small portions of mineralization at the 850 meter vertical
Because
mark.
it's kind of
More of
like
that.
three layers to the cake, right?
Exactly. So yeah, as I mentioned, the indicated is focused in the well-drilled area, and the inferred dips down below that where we have sufficient drill spacing.
Into the second layer of the cake.
Second, and a little bit of the third layer.
Actually, it's that third layer that really has me excited, Jonathan. Since we last spoke, I looked at the zones, and that third layer looks like it could be really big and high grade as well.
Exactly. And then I think the drilling has helped support that, expanding it at depth, with, as you mentioned, 2.4% over 17.5 meters. But the one important thing that we also noted in that release, that was within a continuous envelope of 0.83% over 78 meters. So that's not above underground cutoff as of today. But the important thing about that is the alteration and mineralized zone is 80 meters at depth. So from our view, that's extremely important because it shows the strength and the size of the system is strong at depth. Although it's not, we have a strong 20-meter interval over well over cutoff and resource grade as of today. Just like in the first 300 meters vertical, where holes were drilled like 1% copper over 50 meters, you go one section over, you clip the high grade veining within that, and you're 3% over 40. So the important thing is we've proven the structure to depth, expanded it up to 200 meters away from the historical resource, and the strength is still there. So that was the important question. We've added some really good intercepts well above resource grade and
So is the
cutoff.
belief there that there's like these VMS zones and then there's high grade secondary mineralization coming in there?
Yeah, that's correct. So really, when we look at the first 300 meters vertical, that's what we believe will be duplicated in the mid-level and as we grow the plunge. We
Okay.
have three parallel high-grade lenses in what is a continuous disseminated unit. Uh, so the plunge of uh, the overall system is shallow dipping, but then these higher grade lenses are more steep. So we're getting a better understanding of the overall system. But really, the important thing is we had a good intercepted depth. The strength of the system is there. And that's what I think is really gonna, it helps support this is a deep-seated system and we have a lot of room for growth here.
So shared the screen there, and this will help people better understand the layers to these VMS cakes, if you will.
Mhm.
Here's the first 300-meter layer. Then you've got the mid-level that Jonathan was talking about. The bulk of the drilling that informs the resources in the bulk of it's in this first layer, and some of it's in the second layer. Did I get that correct?
That's correct. And
But
more
here's
on the
what
east side, that's better defined in the second two layers.
and here's what really gets me excited. So, as you can see in this first layer here, folks, these are grade shells. The yellow is 2 to 3% copper, and the red is 3%. So you can see the distribution of the colors there. The green is actually 1 to 2%. So all of this material, whether you're looking at green, yellow, or red, is very exciting stuff. Um, but here you look down here, and when you start looking at this, and I mean the high grade and well, even the yellow stuff and the green stuff was pretty high grade, but your highest
Mhm.
grade, that really dwarfs what you're seeing in the first layer.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're very excited about this is like and to put it in perspective again, this is a 1 kilometer continuous strike at surface down to 850 meters, which we've extended down to about 1,000 meters vertical. So this is a very sizable footprint, and that really mirrors some of the largest deposits in the Abitibi. So really, the depth extent is completely open. We've been able to highlight that through 338. We're going to be using downhole geophysics to try to highlight that hole to look for better sources, off-hole conductors, pulse that those key semi-massive to massive calco lenses and to better vector in on where's the higher grade pockets of this deposit at depth.
Well, your high grade down there could be a monster.
Yeah, we agree because this is we think that this is a feeder system. Um, we're still at, I think, scratching the surface of trying to really understand the controls and like, could there be a bigger massive sulfide source down dip? Like you look at Foran that used downhole geophysics to identify the Tesla zone. That zone started at roughly 1,000 to 1,200 meters vertical, and it's a massive extension of their deposit. So again, I guess, some of the our shareholders or reviewers have said, well, this is really deep drilling. Could it really be that economic? And yes, these systems like LaRonde was a 3 to 4 kilometer underground mine that was extremely profitable. So this is still shallow for an
LaRonde is
underground.
a company maker for
Yeah,
uh,
with Agnico.
Agnico. That's really what got them to become a household name.
Exactly. And some of their best gold zones occurred under 500 to 750 meters vertical. So that's the nice thing. The key thing is the starting size of this.
I'm going to
Usually
interrupt
when,
you for a
yeah,
second there. Folks, in these VMS deposits, there's what's called zonation of grade. The farther you are away from the heat engine, you get zinc, lead, and silver. The closer you get to the heat engine, you start getting higher copper and gold. And so seeing the gold distribution and the copper distribution in this hole is interesting. What of this 4.9%, how much of that is made up of copper and how much of it's made up? It's got to be here somewhere.
yeah, there was one, I think, 4 meter interval that we ran close to 1.5 grams gold. So we did have good gold within the system. Still very copper lead. It's majority copper in those intercepts, but there was some good gold numbers mixed in where we see the quartz veining intercutting the calco.
So far, you're still it sounds like you're still moving towards the heat engine.
Exactly, exactly. And that's where, again, I think that's why we've been able to attract a lot of attention from the majors so far, because that's a lot of the key things that with the initial signature of this deposit, those are all key questions that could take this from a great opportunity to be a world-class asset. So that's why, in addition to the drilling, we're doing deep-seated geophysics to try to look at where's the source of this potential system, whether that's downhole EM, EMT, VTEM, the gravity that we did. So we're combining everything together to really try to look at, besides the depth extent, is there other parallel lenses? I think that there's a chance that we're going to be able to identify other parallel lenses within this phase 2 drill program because we are drilling at different orientations than what SOCOM did in the past.
Well, in the big model of VMSs, they come in clusters,
Mhm.
and usually where you find one or two, you find many. Um, and so I don't think that's pie in the sky. But you mentioned something about geophysics, and I work. My mentor in geophysics was the world exploration manager for Anglo, and he would jokingly say, "Well, sometimes the magic works, and sometimes the magic doesn't work." And what he was trying to emphasize there is the survey you're using, is it confirmed with the drilling? When that happens, the magic is working.
Mhm.
And how is that played out on the open pit growth target? Was there a geophysical anomaly there that was confirmed with drilling?
Near surface it was. So this was a mag low between two mag highs where this deposit was hosted. So the signature was, and that's what attracted the initial drilling on the contact of this graphitic unit to the south. So the contact is the the near surface anomaly is well understood. We've targeted the extensions. As you can see on your slide, on the western portion of that grade shell model, we see the western satellite zone. That's a brand new target that we identified in the first half of the year
Oh,
by
over
yeah,
here?
yeah, by drilling, by following the signature uptrend. The
Okay.
more difficult thing is to try to look at the signature at depth because we do have noisy overburden. The geophysics gets a lot less reliable as you cross the 3 to 500 meter boundary, but that's why we're combining some other methods to
So,
zone in
folks,
on
what Jonathan is describing there is that in geophysics, depending on the kind of survey you're looking at, you have some depth limitations to certain kinds of surveys. Some of them will give you good resolution down to a few hundred meters, but not much below that. And so target using that is difficult. And then there are deeper penetrating surveys that you can do from the surface. But then Jonathan has also talked about downhole geophysics. And so now this alleviates that problem of seeing from the surface down deeper because you're putting a tool down the drill core and then you can see what's beyond that. So it can help give you tremendous resolution.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. So we're really looking at all methods to try to get as much out of our money with our deep drilling. And really, like as the example I mentioned earlier, it some of these deeper downhole EM can really help you vector in onto what is the source or the heat engine of this system. So that's what we're looking forward to because if we're able to find that, that's where this gets even more exciting than we've highlighted today. So we're well financed. We're fully financed to complete the geophysics mentioned, complete our 16,500 meter program by Christmas. We've only announced 2,000 meters so far, and we're still fully financed for another 20,000 meters next year. So we're in great position to continue to build up this model and really continue to build towards this being a world-class opportunity.
Okay, so Jonathan, I see a bunch of green holes,
Mhm.
and are those it's not on your it show current and phase two. So the green, that's historical drilling?
No, all the green is our phase two program. So that's the holes that we are so the ones that you see that, for example, in the center 12, 74, 24, 345, though that is a hole that has been drilled that we're waiting on assays. When
Oh,
you
okay.
see a code that says like next door 3000A, that's a planned hole number that has yet to be drilled. But those green traces make up the entirety of the phase two drill plan.
Oh, wow. Okay. So these have never been reported yet. Most of these.
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly. So the
okay.
ones that we've put the program number on are still ones that we're waiting on assays and processing. But again, we'll have another round of results out in roughly a week and a half, and we'll have results every 2 weeks.
So that gives you, so before you didn't have this density of drilling into these open targets.
Exactly. So really we're picking key gaps in the resource in the mid-level. As you can see in the western plunge, we have some deeper holes that are in brand new uncovered areas. But but I think starting with 338 and 338 wedge, we've been able to demonstrate that we've targeted a completely unknown area and have been able to extend the system. So I
Wow.
do expect that we're able to continue to do that.
Well, you didn't
Uh,
just extend it, you upgraded it quite significantly from this and this into these red stuff.
mhm,
See, what I'm curious about is, does this shell just keep going and going and going? And then does it come around here and keep going and going and going?
mhm.
And and how much of this red material starts showing up down here? Because that's phenomenal stuff.
Mhm.
This could be, you know, like we say, a monster sitting underneath there.
Exactly, and that's why we're excited. We planned those holes down dip from that major anomaly on the east side. So again, and a lot of these holes are situated as multi-purpose with wedges and directional. So
Yeah.
we're not just drilling one more expensive hole and then having to follow it up on it again from surface. So we'll be able to get coverage at least 3 or 4 different wedges, for example, out of some of these deeper holes that allows us to cover that brand new area better.
So all of this, all of these, all this is all pending. Assays pending.
That's correct. So the ones that have been completed as of today, drilled, we've put the program number on it, and then the ones that are still in like a 2805A, those are still to be drilled. But we are working through that sequence and making good progress on it.
So you'll shut down for Christmas break a little and then catch up on a bunch of assay results and be putting assay results out for now and for several months.
Yeah, exactly. Like we won't have much of a break. Like we'll take a break at Christmas, get caught up, but then we're right back into the winter drilling. So it will be pretty continuous over the next 6 months. So a lot of news flow in store. And again, we'll be announcing a lot of the geophysics, and then testing standalone brand new targets outside of B26 during the
Beautiful.
first quarter. So a lot in store. And I think I've heard a bit of frustration from some of our followers and shareholders in response to the stock price on the resource and the drill results. And I think the key thing from us is we've mapped out some of the selling that's come in. We've seen we've seen strong evidence that there was naked shorting on the day of the resource, looking at the CDS movements and that. But I think the key thing from our side is there is certainly games that are played in this junior mining market, but that's only a concern when you're out of money. We are very in a great position financially, and there's sometimes where the market gets it wrong. This is an example of when the market's got it wrong. You always have to have a handle on what the value of the asset is worth and where your market cap is. And at some points, there is a disconnect between those two. And
Yep.
I'm confident that this is a time that that's the case. And we've started to present the opportunity. I've been traveling for the last 3 weeks, and there's some very notable people and funds that have been very impressed by the resource. So I'm confident there's a bit of short-term volatility coming out of the election and some of the moves in the metals. But at the end of the day, over the last year, we have increased the resource that contained copper by 38%. We've increased the gold by 29%. And really, we're getting very close to that critical mass benchmark. So it's something that is very rare in this market. As you said, these high grade polymetallics are very hard to come by. Since we spoke last, 4N Mining raised $350 million with
Wow.
Agnico Eagle taking 10% of the company. So I understand some of the frustrations from my shareholders, but at the same time, we financed at the right time. We've positioned the company very well, and we will push through this short-term volatility. Because at the end of the day, a quality asset and the value that that brings will push through the short-term volatility.
Now, do you think that some of that also could be from the messaging? I've listened to your presentations, done interviews with you, and
Mhm,
a lot of your talking about the story has been focused on trying to prove up this theory of what's near surface.
mhm,
But to be honest with you, Jonathan, what really cranks me up is what is at depth. That could be a monster sitting at depth. And if you find one monster, the chances are there's more. So what I'm getting at is that focusing on what you have been to prove up your theory is kind of like setting the stage that you're setting modest expectations and trying to
mhm,
outperform those or more than deliver on that.
mhm,
But I think lost in your story is this potential for a monster if you focus everything on that.
mhm,
And there's a lot of evidence in your drilling and what I see there that you could have that monster sitting there and more. But I don't see that priced into your valuation at all. What do you think about those observations?
I think that's a very good point. I think that it's something that we need to better communicate. We've been focused on the resource growth, but there's still a lot of discovery potential here. Like with the strength of this system, we could be one drill hole away from having like a world-class hole because of, again, the system is wide at depth. We have the higher grade pockets. Does this system open up in a certain area? It very well could, as we see it in the first 300 meters vertical. I only use that as an example because that's the only area that has been well drilled amongst the deposit.
Yep.
So the discovery potential is real, whether that's down dip, whether that's other parallel lenses, whether that's the standalone targets on the project. And I think that's where we have another 15,000 or sorry, 35,000 meters of funded drilling to pull one of those holes that the markets goes, this is that they've taken what is a great resource and here's what makes this world class. So that's why we continue to do a lot behind the scenes in terms of modeling all the holes, in incorporating geophysics, because we are pushing for that hole that really brings us the limelight on what is still a well-backed story on a fundamental resource. But that's a great point, Alan. There is still a lot of discovery potential here.
Well, I think your first world class, you're actually drilling into it now. And I think that the where you find one of these world-class deposits in a VMS, like when you're looking at the Iberian Pyrite Belt and other well-known VMS camps, where there's one elephant, there's usually more elephants. And I think you're tapping into one right now.
Mhm,
And that for people to look at that hole that you just reported and as an explorer who knows something about these kind of systems, it kind of gives me goosebumps, John. And I don't see any goosebumps by the audience out there. And I think they're really missing an opportunity here and not, some of the problem is, Jonathan, people look at drill results and they look at the news release and then they look at the stock price to assess whether it's good
mhm.
or bad or indifferent. And sometimes that's asked backwards. You just need to look at these zones and look at where you're hitting them, and it's a spectacular hole, actually, in my opinion.
I agree. It was an excellent hole. Um, I think yeah, again, the market, especially today, where we don't have a lot of inflows of capital into the space, and it is still a very tough market. It is very based on momentum. And we've had very good momentum in the past, and we're fighting through a bit of a period of resistance right now. But again, that's that is an issue when you have to finance. We don't have to finance. So we will push through this period. We have we've gotten this on the radar of a lot of key companies, key individuals, key funds. So we'll get through this period, I'm very confident that we will push through and we'll get recognized in the market. It's not instantaneous these days. But again, these opportunities are very hard to come by. We've done a lot, we've accomplished a lot in a year, and there's a lot more still to come. So we're
Well,
excited to get more batches of drill results out there and other strategic items that we're working on.
well, you don't have quite as many gray hairs as me, and that's I would point out to you, Jonathan, that I their markets are always tough. Uh,
Mhm.
Good bull markets, bear markets, sideways markets. This is not an easy business, the mining business. When I talk to you in about 10 years and you have a few more gray hairs, you'll realize that more. But my mentor in geology always told me that, you follow the truth machine and that and try to ignore the market. And the truth machine, when you hit spectacular holes like that, in a layer of what could be a world-class sized underground high-grade copper polymetallic system, that's spectacular.
Mhm.
And I'm glad I got the chance to explain that to people why I think that's spectacular. To me, the market is the market. It's going to go up, down, sideways. That's what the market does. But finding world-class deposits, there's certain trends that I call it the Bob Darney trend. He was my mentor in geology, and what he said is that all projects, exploration projects, start out very big. Then when you drill them, they tend to get
Mhm.
very, very small. But mines are different. Mines, they get better and better the more drilling you do and the more science you apply to it. And the second part of the Bob Darney trend is that they often give you these pleasant surprises. That's a very pleasant surprise that you're following the Bob Darney trend. It's getting better and better as you go, and you're getting pleasant surprises. Seeing that high grade at the bottom of that hole, quite significant distance from where the other high grade is in that layer. That's phenomenal stuff, Jonathan.
I agree with you. And that's the one thing that you can't fake in this business is, as you mentioned, the truth machine. You can fake things with high dollar promotion. You can play games with a stock, but you can't fake drill results and what it amounts into a resource. So that's the thing. As I mentioned, it's about knowing the value of the asset that you're developing, and that allows you to make good decisions on the financing side of it because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we think that there's a um, disconnect between the value and what we've created over the last year and
Yep.
the recognition in the market. But that, as you said, that's out of our control. But what we can do is we keep drilling this, keep getting it in front of the right people that we think could be very supportive shareholders that see this as the opportunity that we do and want to be partners in this for the next 3 to 4 years as we really scale this out. So I'm confident that our plan is going to come together, and I appreciate our shareholders' patience in the meantime because it is a volatile market, but at the end of the day, um, a world-class deposit is very hard to come by, and we do think that we have that opportunity, and we'll continue to build that thesis up. Don't take my word for it. Look at what we've done over a year. 11.5 million tons, 18 and a half. The contained metal up 38%, 29 on the copper, 29 on the gold, and we're hitting 200 meters deeper than the resource. So look, we'll continue to build up credibility for that target size, and I'm confident with so few of these in the marketplace, we will be recognized.
Wow, you just hit on a phenomenal topic there, which is kind of what I started out with. Finding these kind of I'm very bullish on copper for the supply and demand scenario. And I want to cover more copper projects, Jonathan. I'm hunting
Mhm.
every single day. I look through news release after news release after news release, trying to find really good copper stories. And there just are not very many of them. Maybe a handful that I can really feel like I can get behind 100%. And especially high grade. And you are at the top of that list of the ones that I follow.
Mhm.
And but yeah, that's a fantastic point, Jonathan. We need more copper mines. There's not enough copper mines in development. There's not enough exploration. The exploration discoveries have fallen off a map in the last 20 years, which
Mhm.
means there's not enough development, and the majors are going to be struggle to increase production. Then you've got all this demand coming. Yeah, you brought up something that I'm passionate about, Jonathan, which is copper exploration and copper in itself, and finding a story like yours is very, very rare, especially in a place like Quebec. That's couldn't get better than all that.
Yeah, in Quebec with good infrastructure, this is like we're a long time we're a ways away from trying to put economics because of the resource growth. But when you compare this to other copper opportunities like porphyries, this is a lot smaller capex that we have more suitors for this. This is a, a target for a precious metals producer because a lot of the precious metals producers want copper gold. They want to bring their jurisdictional minimize their jurisdictional risk, come back to places like Quebec. So the important thing
For high
at the
margin
end,
material.
exactly. So the important thing is as well is this a project that's saleable? In my opinion, it is extremely saleable, and that's part of getting recognition in the market, building this towards our end user. Um, and at the end of the day, there isn't a lot of these opportunities out there like we've talked about. So the all the ingredients are there. We're keeping we've had great presentations with different of the producers over the last 6 months. So we'll keep everybody up to date, and I think that this is something that's going to come together and surprise people. Hard to like the general markets, like the gold trade, like the copper trade. It is hard to time things, but all the ingredients are there, and amongst I think a lot of exciting drilling over the remainder of the year.
Well, I'm pretty excited about your world-class potential target that I think you're now tapping into and seeing those pleasant surprises that nobody seems to pay attention to. But I've seen this movie before, Jonathan, and it's only a matter of time before the preponderance of evidence is before enough people that they start to value the world-class potential more. I mean, I think you're already in starting on a world-class discovery at depth. And I think there's one of those in a VMS camp, there's always more.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. So it's about just continuing to work hard here. The teams do, Martin Demirs and the team at site is doing an excellent job. We're growing the team. We're adding pieces, adding team members on the geophysics side. So really bringing all these pieces together to continue to search for that larger source. That again is another reason for the market to get really excited.
Well, one of these times you're going to have to bring your geologist on for the show so we can really geek out on rocks together, Jonathan, because man, I look at this and it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
All righty. You got any closing comments? I think you made a bunch of really good ones there.
No, I think I appreciate you having me on once again, Alan, and I appreciate your audience tuning in, and I think and again, it's a tough market, but I appreciate all the support of our shareholders and the trust that they've given us with this great opportunity. So we look forward to keeping everybody up to date.
Well, hopefully they sharpen their pencil and start to add up world-class potential and hold on to their stock really tight and maybe buy a little bit more. That has a way of sending the stocks higher as well, Jonathan. Alrighty, I'm going to close it off. There you go, folks. Abitibi Metals in Quebec. They've already got sort of what you could call the meat and potatoes, which is quite exceptional on its own in the resource. But this third layer of the cake really has me quite excited about the potential to be sitting on a really big world-class deposit of high-grade copper with other metals in there as well. And knowing what I know about VMS deposits, and you can do your own research on it, where you find one, you find others. And so if you've got one world-class deposit, there's usually more of those around in close proximity. And I don't think a lot of that is understood yet when people look at Abitibi metals. But when I see those numbers from the Truth Machine, it gets me pretty excited. And I think, as Jonathan said, they're well financed to really do a good job at this. They don't just have to, hope for one hole, and if that doesn't come in, they've killed it. This project deserves a real serious exploration on it, and they're funded to do exactly that. They're doing the right kind of work, and I think they've got a lot of exciting results to come out in the probably right around the corner. On that note, as always, do your homework, speak with your financial advisors. I'm not making buying or selling recommendations. That's up for you to decide. What I can say is, after 30 years of exploration experience and having been mentored by brilliant people in geology, geophysics, and geochemistry, that this is passing my smell test. And check out if it passes yours as well. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.